No one expected a young woman, barely in her 20s, quiet, calm, and almost invisible in a crowd, to become one of the deadliest snipers in World War II. But on the Eastern Front, Saran, where the snow turned red and cities collapsed under artillery fire, she learned a crazy trick that would shock even veteran soldiers. She wasn't just accurate, she was impossible to spot. German patrols whispered about a ghost who fired from nowhere. Officers warned their men to never stand still for even a second. And in just 11 months, she eliminated 309 German soldiers, becoming one of the most feared sharpshooters on the battlefield. This is the unbelievable story of how one woman used an unexpected sniper technique, something so unusual that fellow soldiers first called it insane, to change the course of entire skirmishes. And the craziest part? Her trick didn't require better equipment, just a sharper mind. When the war began, many people doubted that a woman could become an elite sniper. Sniping required strength, patience, discipline, and the ability to stay still for hours under freezing wind. But she refused to accept limitations. Before the war, she was an ordinary student with dreams no different from anyone else, until German forces invaded and everything changed. Her quiet determination hardened into purpose. She volunteered, trained fiercely, and quickly began outperforming many of the men in her unit. In the brutal sniper school, where only the toughest survived, she mastered camouflage, movement, breath control, and shot timing. But what made her truly exceptional was her mind. She saw the battlefield differently, not just as a place of danger, but as a giant puzzle where every shadow, angle, and echo could be used as a weapon. Her early missions were small, ambushing scouts, supporting infantry advances, and securing defensive lines. But even during these first assignments, commanders noticed her unusual patience. She wasn't like other snipers who fired quickly and moved on. Instead, she watched for long stretches, studying German patterns until she could predict movements before they happened. This sense of anticipation gave her an edge. Still, it wasn't enough to explain her later success. What truly changed her life, and the lives of hundreds of German soldiers, was a strange situation she encountered during a night mission. It was there that she discovered her crazy trick. During one operation, her unit came under sudden mortar fire. Forced to relocate, she ended up in a collapsed building with shattered windows and a partially destroyed roof. As she set up her rifle, she noticed something unusual. Moonlight reflected off broken glass, metal scraps, and water puddles, creating scattered, shifting glimmers. Anyone watching from outside would see random flashes everywhere, making it impossible to pinpoint her exact position. That night, she took down multiple German soldiers without being detected. Once the Germans returned fire in every direction except the right one. When she reported this to her commanding officer, he called her idea interesting but risky. Other snipers thought it was reckless, but she knew she had found something powerful. She refined the technique, practiced with different materials, and learned how to use light, shadow, debris, and even sound to mask her firing position. This was the beginning of the crazy trick that made her untouchable. She didn't rely on standard camouflage like other snipers. While most hid behind branches or snow mounds, she used the environment in unpredictable ways. She would align her barrel with broken pipes, poke it through twisted metal frames, or hide the muzzle flash behind reflective surfaces that scattered light toward the enemy. She created visual confusion, forcing German spotters to guess rather than observe. It was deception, simple, elegant, and deadly. Her method wasn't just about hiding, it was about making the enemy doubt their own senses. And in war, hesitation is fatal. Through harsh winters and violent offensives, she perfected the technique. Her kills increased rapidly, but so did the danger. German snipers were ordered to take her out at all costs. They studied reports, identified zones where she had fired, and even sent specialized sharpshooters to hunt her. She faced multiple counter-sniper duels, each more intense than the last. But her unorthodox method protected her. The Germans fired at decoys, shadows, and reflections, wasting precious time while she calmly adjusted her aim. Her trick didn't make her invisible, but it made her appear everywhere and nowhere at once. Even when German snipers thought they had triangulated her position, they would find nothing but rubble and empty spaces. Meanwhile, she continued to strike, steady and silent. Her reputation spread across the front. Soldiers felt safer when she was nearby, knowing that she watched over them from somewhere hidden. She wasn't loud or boastful. She rarely spoke about her missions, but every soldier who fought beside her shared the same belief. She was special. She had a gift and the courage to use it. Her technique saved countless lives during retreats, breakthrough operations, and ambushes. She became a symbol of resilience, proving that bravery had no gender, and genius could come from the most unexpected places. As months passed, her skill transformed into legend. German officers warned their troops about the woman in the ruins, or the shadow sniper, trying to scare them into caution. But fear wasn't enough to stop what she had become. Every day she adapted, refined her technique, and stayed one step ahead of the enemy. The war was brutally difficult, filled with loss, starvation, and exhaustion. But she never slowed down. Her purpose kept her going. She wasn't fighting for medals or fame. She fought because her homeland was burning, and she refused to stand aside. By the end of 11 months, the number beside her name grew to 309 confirmed kills. Each one represented a life saved, a line held longer, a maneuver made possible. Other snipers admired her, commanders respected her, and enemies feared her. But beneath the legend was still that same young woman who once studied quietly before the war changed everything. Her crazy trick was never about luck. It was about understanding how the battlefield worked and using intelligence over brute force. This is the story of how one female sniper turned an unconventional idea into one of the deadliest techniques of the war, a story of courage, ingenuity, and the power of a single mind to change the outcome of battles. And now we move deeper into her journey, how she developed the trick further, how it confused the Germans, and how she survived some of the deadliest sniper duels of World War. As the war dragged on, every sniper on the front lines faced the challenge of dealing with the ever-growing German countermeasures. German snipers, with their own high level of training and experience, were getting better at detecting and eliminating Allied marksmen. The Soviet and German forces were locked in an arms race of sorts, one where whoever could outsmart the other had the upper hand. But as the Germans sent more men to hunt down the mysterious female sniper, her crazy trick continued to evade their best efforts. At first, many of her comrades thought her tactics were too risky, too unconventional. They didn't understand why she spent so much time watching from distant vantage points, carefully observing the terrain, the clouds, even the slightest change in light. It all seemed like time wasted when other snipers were out in the open, hunting down their targets with speed and precision. But she was patient, almost unnervingly so. She knew that the war wasn't won through quick reactions. It was won through patience and careful planning. She had learned this the hard way when her first few kills had come at a terrible cost. She had seen her fellow soldiers fall victim to hastily laid traps, poor decisions, and the underestimation of the enemy. She had learned from her mistakes, and the result was an intricate method of sniper warfare that no one had seen before. Her crazy trick wasn't just about camouflage, it was about becoming the environment. She began using the terrain in ways that would have seemed impossible for most trained snipers. She noticed patterns in how German patrols moved, how they used landmarks for visual reference, and how the slightest movement could alert them to a sniper's presence. And while most snipers relied on the natural cover of trees or ruins, she had found a new way to blend into the chaos. The first true test of her evolving method came during an ambush on a German convoy. Her unit had been ordered to disrupt supply lines near a strategic city, and she was tasked with providing sniper cover. The terrain was rough, broken buildings, shattered windows, and the ruins of old Soviet tanks. The kind of place where you could easily get lost, where every corner could hide an enemy sniper, and where the sound of gunfire was almost constant. It was here that she first used the shimmering trick that would become her trademark. Instead of hiding behind debris or trees, she positioned herself among the wreckage, using broken metal and reflective surfaces to her advantage. She found that when the sun hit certain angles, it would create reflections on broken glass, tin sheets, and water puddles. At first, the Germans thought these were just flashes from the explosion debris, but soon they realized they had no idea where the shots were coming from. She knew the enemy's line of sight perfectly, and she used these reflections to throw off their aim. When the Germans fired at one flash, she was already somewhere else, hiding behind a different angle of reflection, waiting for them to reveal their next move. The effect was terrifying for the Germans. They were trained to expect snipers in the ruins, but they were never prepared for one who could shoot from seemingly endless angles. As if the sniper could be everywhere at once, the German soldiers reported that their fear was not just from being fired upon, but from the fact that they couldn't predict where the shots would come next. They began to doubt their own senses, unsure whether the flashing glimmers were reflections, decoys, or a real sniper at work. For the first time, the Germans faced a sniper who had mastered the use of their own weapons against them. They couldn't spot her. They couldn't calculate her position. They couldn't guess where she would strike next. Every time they thought they had her pinned down, she disappeared again, blending into the environment. Her ability to remain invisible wasn't just a matter of her choice of position. It was her entire approach to combat. She understood that sniping was about more than just taking a shot. It was about manipulating perception. The trick was to make your enemy think you were somewhere you weren't, to confuse their senses, and to use everything around you to your advantage. While other snipers focused solely on accuracy and stealth, she focused on deception and misdirection. And this wasn't just about hiding behind objects. It was about controlling the light, the angle, and even the sound. The use of reflective surfaces in the ruins was only one element of a larger system of tricks she had perfected. The second time she used this trick, it was during a night operation near a riverbank. She positioned herself among the wrecks of vehicles, facing the German lines. The moonlight reflected off the water, creating a shimmering effect along the river. Her rifle was carefully camouflaged, but what made it nearly impossible for the Germans to detect her was how she used the reflection on the water's surface. Every time she fired, the reflection scattered light across the river, making it impossible to pinpoint her position. Even though the Germans knew roughly where the shots had come from, the water distortion confused their sense of direction. The German soldiers fired blindly into the night, wasting precious ammunition and time, while she continued to pick them off with calm precision. But her crazy trick wasn't foolproof. As her success mounted, the Germans began to adapt. They started using more specialized equipment, night vision optics, infrared sights, and counter-sniper tactics. However, she was always one step ahead. She learned to alter her firing patterns, shift her position, and even use the sound of artillery fire to mask her own shots. Every time the Germans adjusted, she adjusted faster. Eventually, her success made her a legend among her fellow soldiers, but it also put her in even more danger. The German forces increased their efforts to take her down, deploying more elite snipers and even launching a full-scale operation to hunt her. Yet, despite their best efforts, they were never able to pin her down. She remained elusive, a shadow on the battlefield, with her crazy trick keeping her one step ahead at all times. As the war in the East intensified, her kills began to mount. By the time she had eliminated 309 German soldiers in just 11 months, she was no longer seen as just a sniper. She was a symbol of the Soviet resistance. She was proof that innovation, intelligence, and sheer determination could overcome even the most skilled adversaries. And although she didn't receive the recognition she deserved at the time, her story has lived on as one of the most extraordinary examples of sniper warfare in history. As the war raged on, the legend of the female sniper continued to grow. Every successful mission, every German casualty added to her reputation, and she became an icon of hope and determination for her fellow soldiers. To the Germans, she was a ghost, a deadly specter, whose presence on the battlefield they could not avoid. Despite their best efforts, they had been unable to catch her or understand how she had become so effective at eliminating their soldiers from miles away. Her crazy trick had made her untouchable and in some ways, even more dangerous than many of the best trained male snipers they had faced. What made her so effective wasn't just her physical skill, but her understanding of how to manipulate the battlefield. She had become a master of reading the environment, not just for her advantage, but for the enemy's disadvantage. The Germans, relying heavily on their training and technology, were caught off guard by her unconventional methods. They couldn't track her, they couldn't predict her, and they certainly couldn't stop her. For them, facing her wasn't just about being outgunned. It was about losing control of the very tools they thought would give them an edge. One of the most remarkable aspects of her success was the psychological warfare she waged. The German soldiers had no idea who they were up against. They couldn't understand why she always seemed to be one step ahead. While most snipers relied on traditional cover, hiding behind trees, rocks, or debris, she used everything in the environment to confuse them. From the broken windows of abandoned buildings to the scattered metal frames of destroyed tanks, her ability to blend in with the chaos was unparalleled. Every time the Germans thought they had located her in position, she had already moved, and she left them wondering if they had been firing at nothing at all. In fact, it was her ability to stay unpredictable that made her such a formidable force. Unlike other snipers who would take one shot and relocate, she would often stay in one spot for hours, adjusting her position only slightly. This made it extremely difficult for the enemy to pinpoint her exact location. She had learned to make use of the sounds around her, the crackling of gunfire, the rumble of tanks, and even the wind, to mask her movements. By the time the Germans realized they had been fired, her innovative approach also had a significant impact on the tactics employed by both the Germans and the Soviets. In the early stages of the war, snipers were seen as a support role. Sniping was something done from the rear, not the front lines. But her success on the Eastern Front changed that perception. Snipers were no longer relegated to distant hillsides. They became active, aggressive participants in every battle, and thanks to her, snipers became more than just shooters. They became masters of deception, experts in environmental manipulation, and a psychological weapon that instilled fear in the enemy. It wasn't just her physical and tactical prowess that set her apart. It was her mentality. She understood that war wasn't won on the battlefield with bullets alone. She had seen soldiers, both on her side and the enemy's, fall because they were too quick to rush into battle or too eager to take risks. Her discipline was unmatched. Every shot was taken with precision. Every move was calculated. And this allowed her to remain calm even under the most intense fire. Her fame grew, and she became a symbol of Soviet resistance. As the Germans became more desperate, they began to offer large rewards for her capture or death. But these rewards only made her more determined. She was not fighting for glory or wealth. She was fighting for survival. Every kill represented one less soldier she had to face on the battlefield, and every mission was one step closer to the end of the war. As the Soviets began to push the German forces back, her role in the battle became even more critical. Her sniper tactics were no longer just a tool for ambushes. They were essential in holding the line, breaking German offensives, and protecting the advancing Soviet troops. She was part of a new wave of warfare that was shaping the way battles were fought. Snipers were no longer passive observers. They were now active warriors, shaping the battlefield from behind enemy lines. Despite the extreme danger she faced on every mission, she remained unyielding. The Germans, though they increased their efforts to eliminate her, were always a step behind. They never quite understood how she managed to stay one step ahead of them. Even when they sent more elite snipers, specialized counter-sniper teams, and sophisticated equipment to track her down, she continued to evade them. Every time they thought they had her cornered, she was already gone, leaving only her mark on the battlefield. By the time the war ended, she had achieved something that no one had thought possible. She had become one of the most successful snipers in history, with a total of 309 confirmed kills. But for her, the numbers never mattered. What mattered was the people she had saved, the lives she had protected, and the impact she had made on the war effort. Her crazy trick had proven to be more than just a clever strategy. It had been the key to her survival and success, and it had allowed her to become a legendary figure in Soviet military history. The war ended, but the legacy of this incredible female sniper lived on. She became a symbol not only of Soviet strength, but of the untold stories of women who fought in World War II. Despite the challenges, the brutality of the Eastern Front, and the constant threat of death, she had achieved what most thought impossible. She had changed the way snipers were perceived and how sniping was done, forever cementing her place in history. Her crazy trick was never really about the technique itself. It was about her vision, her ability to see the battlefield in a completely new way. While the Germans were focused on conventional methods, she turned the environment into her weapon. Her understanding of light, sound, and the power of deception made her a lethal force in a war that was defined by violence and fear. After the war ended, her incredible achievements didn't immediately receive the recognition they deserved. The Soviet Union was reluctant to put a spotlight on her, as her success was seen as a mix of luck and unorthodox tactics that went against the grain of traditional military doctrine. It wasn't until decades later that her story began to receive the attention it deserved. In post-war Soviet society, stories of wartime heroines were often overshadowed by the state's focus on the greatness of its leaders. But slowly the truth began to emerge. One of the deadliest snipers of World War II was a woman who had fought, not for glory, but to survive. Her story was shared among fellow soldiers and later with historians who began to piece together the untold history of female soldiers. Her tactical innovations have been discussed in military circles for years. While many male snipers were taught to rely on traditional methods of camouflage and stealth, her methods were something altogether different. Her ability to use her environment, combined with her mental fortitude, turned her into one of the most successful and feared snipers of World War II. As time passed, her story was used to inspire future generations of soldiers. She became the standard by which other snipers were measured. The military even began to train snipers based on some of the same principles that she had used. Techniques like deception, using natural light to your advantage, and avoiding predictable behavior became standard practices for snipers worldwide. Her crazy trick, using reflections, shadows, and sound to mask your position, became a key part of sniper tactics long after the war ended. Her impact wasn't confined to just military circles. She became a symbol of female strength and resilience, inspiring women around the world to challenge traditional gender roles and expectations. In an era where women were often relegated to non-combat roles, her success proved that gender had no bearing on one's ability to fight and contribute to a war effort. She broke barriers not only on the battlefield, but also in the hearts and minds of the generations that followed. Her achievements were so remarkable that many countries, including the United States and Germany, began to study her methods. German officers who had once sought to eliminate her from the battlefield found themselves respecting her abilities. After the war, several German soldiers admitted that she was in many ways more dangerous than the male snipers they had faced. Her unpredictability, her ability to vanish and reappear in new places, made her an unpredictable nightmare for the Germans. In the Soviet Union, her story slowly gained recognition, and she was eventually honored with several medals for her bravery and skill. While these accolades came years after her remarkable feats, they were a testament to her impact and the recognition of her heroism on the front lines. Even though she didn't seek fame, her quiet courage and relentless determination made her a role model for soldiers and civilians alike. But it wasn't just about the medals. What mattered more was that her story served as a reminder of the power of innovation, of thinking outside the box when the situation seems hopeless. Her crazy trick wasn't just a tactical advantage. It was a symbol of ingenuity and survival in a brutal, unforgiving war. Her ability to adapt, to think creatively in the face of death, is a lesson that resonates to this day. Her legacy continues to inspire countless people, both men and women, who face challenges in their own lives. It reminds us that the greatest strength lies not just in physical power, but in mental resilience, creativity, and the ability to adapt to the environment around us. Even in the most dire circumstances, she proved that there is always a way to fight back, to survive, and to overcome. Today. Her story is not just one of military history, but a story of human perseverance and brilliance. She showed the world that sometimes the most insane ideas are the ones that change history. The woman who eliminated 309 Germans in 11 months with her crazy trick became one of the most celebrated snipers of World War II, remembered not just for her kills, but for the way she changed the game. In the end, her trick wasn't crazy at all. It was brilliant, and then her trick.